In this particular project, I'm going to build on some work that we started looking at in 58.1.2, Action, Innovation and Leadership in the 21st Century, where we started to look at the levels of complexity of problems that we face. In 58.1.2, it was suggested that there's probably 3 levels of problems that we face. The first one is a tame problem or a one-dimensional problem. And here the implication is that what we need to do is we need a depth of technical knowledge. When we experience problem X, then we need to do Y. And Y will usually work when we experience problem X. But then, of course, what happens is we start to get an increased level of complexity with our problems. And when we start to have to deal with complex problems, the resources suggest, and Vidal suggests in the resources that we were given for 58.09, that we need to start to think a little bit differently in order to solve these multi-dimensional problems. What we need, first of all, Vidal suggests that we need an understanding of things like project management. We need an understanding of things like evolutionary principles, and we need to also understand systems thinking as well, and that will help us solve complex problems. And then, of course, what happens, just to really make life interesting, is we can then get wicked problems. Wicked problems are 3-dimensional problems. And the challenge for us now is to be able to recognize the multi-dimensionality of the problems, the fact that there's interdependencies, the fact that the issues are linked, there's no clear place to get purchase with a solution, and perhaps something that will help here is to be able to understand our worldview. If we can understand the way that we are looking and examining at these problems, if we can recognize our worldview, then we can start to understand perhaps which worldview is going to be helpful to solve this problem, which is not, and it will also increase our ability to be able to predict what could happen in the future with these issues, and it also increases our options as well. So when we start to examine different worldviews, different dimensions on these problems, there's some ones that people smarter than me have already looked at that we can use in order to build this worldview. So for example, at one end of the spectrum we have some work that was done by Claire Graves initially, but then by Beck and Cowan with spiral dynamics. And one of their worldviews that they use as a basis for their work is that at different points in times in history, different cultures, different people tend to put themselves first. Then at other points in time, at other points in history, different cultures are more sacrificial. They tend to put other people first. So whether you believe that you should put yourself first, whether you should believe you should put other people first, that's a worldview. Another worldview is, of course, the one of religion versus a secular society. If you look at issues through a religious perspective, you'll arrive at a certain set of conclusions. If you look at problems through a secular lens, you'll arrive at a different set of conclusions. Another worldview that has been used in the past is that integration is good. We should come together in a homogeneous way, and we should start to reduce our differences, understand each other, and start to operate in a similar fashion. Then there is another worldview that says that is dangerous. We should do exactly the opposite. We should all stick to our own, and we should do the opposite of integration. We should fragment our societies. Dependent upon which worldview you have, dependent upon which will depend on culture, which will depend on time, which will depend on your own personal preferences, that will drive a certain set of solutions. Another worldview is the belief that a good economy will lead to happy people, a happy society. And so therefore the way we achieve a happy society is to change our economic policies. The other worldview along that same continuum is of course the opposite of that, and that is happy people lead to a happy economy. So in order to start to examine the sorts of different solutions that we can arrive at to tackle some of the challenges that we face, we can toy with some of these worldviews and see what we get. For example, one map that we could, scenario map type thing we can put together, we can take two of these worldviews, that of integration as opposed to fragmentation, and society leads to good economy, or economy leads to good society. We can overlay these and then we can start to see that different ways of thinking will provide different solutions. For example, in here, let's call this quadrant 1, we're more likely to see solutions along the lines of protecting ourselves, so protectionist type solutions. We want to build a buffer between us and other people around us, an economic buffer. We want to manipulate migration. We want to select who's going to come in here into our country, and we're happy to trade as long as it's to our benefit, is the solutions we're more likely to see. In quadrant 2, what we're more likely to see is, okay, we're happy to trade with you, trade is okay, but we would like to stay separate socially. So a classic example of this could be, in an extreme scenario, North Korea's relationship with China. We're happy to trade, but no one's allowed to cross the border, sort of thing. In quadrant 3, where we get a combination of integration is good and happy society leads to a happy economy, what we're likely to see here is solutions around increasing cultural exchanges, increasing mobility between different countries and different cultures, and how that will lead to economic benefits. And in quadrant 4, where we think that integration is good, but we need to do it economically, what we're more likely to see here is increased economic cooperation, but you need to do it our way. We need to build free trade zones. Perhaps some examples of this is the European Economic Community becoming the EU, and the World Bank's approach to different issues. And then, of course, what happens with wicked problems is we start to get this third dimensionality, which, to be quite frank, does my head in. But there must be some visual way of being able to represent 3 dimensions of a worldview that is going to help us understand a worldview. So this is the aim of my 5809 project, is to be able to create a digital artefact that represents a 3-dimensional worldview. Edward de Bono suggests in his textbook of wisdom that clever is knowing the answer, it's knowing the one way, whereas wisdom is seeing multiple options. And I believe that the benefit of studying worldviews is that it allows us to view multiple options for the challenges that we face.